the 13th seat of Ravensmere. The road into Ravensmere Vale did not announce itself with signs or milestones. It simply narrowed, as though the world had drawn inward, and the mist thickened until distance became irrelevant. Sound softened there. Even the wheels of Alara Corvain's carriage seemed reluctant to echo. The vale lay between low hills that folded around it like a closing hand, their slopes heavy with shadow even before dusk arrived. Locals spoke of Ravensmere only when pressed, and even then their words disagreed. Some claimed the Vale had always been there, unchanged since memory began. Others insisted it shifted, appearing only when called. Elara arrived as twilight surrendered to night. A head rising from a ridge of dark stone stood Ashwind Manor. Its silhouette was unmistakably Gothic, narrow towers ascending with austere determination, pointed arches framing tall windows of unlit glass, and buttresses that seemed less supportive than restraining. The stone bore carvings whose meaning had long eroded from common knowledge. Spirals intersected with crescent forms, thorned circles entwined with symbols that felt deliberate rather than decorative. Ravens lined the parapets and roof edges, so still they might have been sculpted, until one turned its head in unison with several others, as if tracking her approach. Elara had studied witchcraft for most of her adult life, not the sensational kind that dominated popular imagination, but the quieter traditions, records hidden in marginalia, practices disguised as superstition, covenants disguised as folklore. Yet no book or archive had prepared her for the sensation that crept over her as the carriage slowed before the iron gates. The air itself felt attentive, not hostile, not welcoming, simply aware. The letter in her pocket seemed heavier than paper. It had arrived weeks earlier without a seal, without a courier she could identify. When she first unfolded it, the ink had appeared slightly blurred, the words uncertain. Each time she reread it, the phrasing sharpened as though adjusting itself to her comprehension. It spoke of inheritance and unfinished duty, of a role abandoned but not dissolved. She had dismissed it as an elaborate forgery, yet she had not destroyed it. Some things, she had learned, resisted being discarded. The gates opened before she reached them. No chains moved, no mechanism sounded. The iron simply parted, releasing a deep, resonant vibration that traveled through stone and soil alike. Elara stepped down from the carriage, her boots touching gravel that felt unnaturally warm beneath the cool air. She paused only a moment before walking forward, aware that hesitation itself might be a kind of refusal. Inside, Ashwind Manor revealed itself as neither ruin nor museum. The interior was meticulously maintained, though not in any style recognizable to modern taste. Candle sconces shaped like branching roots lined the walls, their flames steady despite the absence of drafts. Corridors curved subtly, their angles refusing to align cleanly, guiding rather than directing movement. Rugs woven with repeating symbols muted her footsteps, their patterns tugging faintly at memory without yielding recognition. She followed no visible guide, yet found herself drawn inevitably toward the manor's heart. Double doors carved with layered reliefs, moons eclipsed by keys, circles pierced by thorns, opened at her approach. Beyond them lay the conclave hall. The chamber was circular, vast without feeling empty. Its domed ceiling displayed constellations painted in luminous mineral pigments, stars arranged in unfamiliar configurations that seemed to shift if stared at too long. 13 high-backed chairs formed a precise ring around a stone floor inlaid with runes. 12 chairs were occupied. The women seated there were not uniform in age or appearance. Some bore the sharpness of youth, others the stillness of long years. Their attire varied: dark wool, layered silk, heavy linen, but each wore an amulet distinct in material and design. Bone polished to a pale sheen, silver etched with spiraling sigils, amber holding suspended shadows, obsidian that reflected nothing at all. Their eyes, however, shared a common intensity, focused entirely on Ilara. No one spoke at first. The silence stretched, deliberate rather than awkward. Ilara felt herself assessed not by scrutiny, but by recognition. At last, the eldest among them rose. Her hair was pale, not merely gray, but the color of frost in moonlight. Her voice carried warmth beneath its weight, resonant without force. She spoke Ilara's name as though it were a conclusion rather than a question, and welcomed her to Ashwind Manor. Then she gestured toward the empty chair. Ilara was told that these women formed the circle of Ravensmere, witches bound not by hierarchy but by obligation. They were guardians of the Vale, its wards, and its accumulated history. Ravensmere, they explained, was not merely land. It was a boundary, a containment shaped by centuries of intention. The empty chair belonged to the witness, a role designed to preserve memory rather than command power. The witness did not rule the coven, nor serve it. Instead, the witness remembered what others were tempted to forget. Every spell cast, every compromise made, every restraint exercised. When fear had once driven the world to erase what it did not understand, the circle had retreated into Ravensmere, sealing unresolved workings within the veil rather than unleashing them beyond it. Memory was the lock that held those remnants in place. Generations earlier, the last witness had left, not in fear, in grief. Without the witness, the coven endured, but the veil weakened. Subtle disturbances began to appear beyond its borders, dreams that lingered too vividly, reflections that recalled faces never seen, shadows that clung longer than expected. Nothing overt, nothing easily dismissed once noticed. Ilara listened as the witches spoke, her skepticism thinning beneath the coherence of their account. She was not asked to accept their claims on faith. Instead, she was invited to observe. Over the following nights, she explored Ashwind Manor under the Circle's careful allowance. She wandered libraries whose shelves rearranged themselves in response to intent rather than catalogue. She read journals written by hands long turned to dust, their ink still warm with purpose. In moonlit gardens, nocturnal flowers unfurled, murmuring fragments of incantations in languages that predated speech as she knew it. In high observatories, she watched stars shift into unfamiliar alignments when observed too intently. She learned that witchcraft here was neither reckless nor theatrical. It was negotiation. Every working carried consequence. Every boundary required maintenance. The veil itself participated, responding to remembrance and neglect alike. As Ilara studied the records of past witnesses, a slow unease settled over her. Their doubts mirrored her own lifelong questions. Their reluctance echoed her resistance to belonging. Again and again she encountered passages that felt less like history and more like autobiography written before she existed. One evening during a ritual meant only to assess the veil's stability, the air changed. The runes in the conclave hall dimmed. Candle flames bent inward, drawn toward the circle's center. Ilara felt a presence press against her awareness, not hostile, but insistent, like a thought demanding acknowledgement. The witches explained that Ravensmere contained remnants of unresolved workings, intentions cast without closure, preserved rather than destroyed. Over centuries, these remnants had gained coherence, not consciousness but momentum. Without the witness to name and contextualize them, they sought expression elsewhere. Ilara understood then why she had been summoned. Her life's work had always centered on restoring meaning to fragments stripped of it. Memory, she realized, was not passive. It was the strongest binding force known. Yet acceptance carried cost. To become the witness meant binding herself to Ravensmere. She could leave, but never fully. The veil would follow her in dreams, instincts, and obligations, unchosen yet unavoidable. The Circle did not disguise this truth. Choice, they insisted, was essential. That night, Ilara wandered alone into a sealed tower chamber. There she found a tall mirror veined with silver fractures. When she approached, it did not reflect her as she was. Faces emerged, women with her eyes, her posture, standing in different centuries. She saw the last witness walking away from Ashwind Manor, sorrow etched into every movement, choosing absence over endurance. At dawn, Ilara returned to the conclave hall. She took the 13th seat. As the circle closed, the runes brightened. The pressure within the veil eased, like a long-held breath released. Ilara spoke aloud the names and intentions she sensed, anchoring them to memory rather than allowing them to seek form. Outside, the fog lifted just enough to reveal distant hills unseen for generations. Life at Ashwind Manor continued, altered but not undone. Ilara became the living record, the keeper of context, the reminder of why certain doors remained closed and why others required careful opening. Ravensmere Vale remained avoided by most, its presence felt rather than understood. And within its boundaries memory endured, not as a weapon, but as a vigilant light held steady against the dark.